characters as diverse as the dysfunctional Squeers family and their abused charge Smike, as well as the good-hearted John Browdie. In London, the eccentric but supportive Newman Noggs and Miss La Creevy come to the aid of Nicholas and his family, whilst on the road to Portsmouth he meets and joins the Crummles theatrical troupe. Nor does Dickens neglect to show us London, as Kate, Nicholas's sister, is introduced into its society, satirized in the vapid hypochondriac Mrs. Wititterly and the corrupt and vicious Sir Mulberry Hawk, whilst the unfeeling London financial world is represented by Ralph Nickleby, a cruel and ruthless businessman who sits like a poisonous spider at the heart of this story. With the theatre so much a part of Nicholas Nickleby, it is not surprising that it was quickly adapted for the stage, even before Dickens had finished writing it. The most popular characters in these adaptations mirrored the public's choice. Mr. Mantalini, the philandering husband of Kate's employer, and Smike proved to be the greatest stage successes. In the 1980s, the Royal Shakespeare Company produced a gripping and colourful stage version over 2 consecutive nights, lasting a total of over 4 hours. Mrs. Nickleby, too, is a comic masterpiece. She is based on Dickens's own mother, who was renowned in the family for her garrulous and rambling narratives. Nicholas and his sister's adventures are told with such a racy spirit, too, that the reader is swept along with them. The pace of the novel testifies once again that Dickens was writing furiously to produce the monthly instalments on time, having so much other work to accomplish. He began writing Nicholas Nickleby as he was still finishing Oliver Twist. At the same time, he was editing a magazine, as well as the jumbled memoirs of the famous clown Grimaldi. It was a considerable workload. His friend Forster said, "At this time he never wrote without the printer at his heels." Nicholas in Yorkshire, with Wackford Squeers.
"Now," said Squeers, giving the desk a great rap with his cane, which made half the little boys nearly jump out of their boots. "Is that physicking over?" "Just over," said Mrs. Squeers, choking the last boy in her hurry, and tapping the crown of his head with the wooden spoon to restore him. "Here, you, Smike, take away now. Look sharp." Smike shuffled out with the basin, and Mrs. Squeers, having called up a little boy with a curly head and wiped her hands upon it, hurried out after him into a species of wash-house where there was a small fire and a large kettle, together with a number of little wooden bowls which were arranged upon a board. Into these bowls Mrs. Squeers, assisted by the hungry servant, poured a brown composition which looked like diluted pincushions without the covers, and was called porridge. A minute wedge of brown bread was inserted in each bowl, and when they had eaten their porridge by means of the bread, the boys ate the bread itself and had finished their breakfast. Whereupon Mr. Squeers said in a solemn voice, "For what we have received, may the Lord make us truly thankful," and went away to his own. Nicholas distended his stomach with a bowl of porridge, for much the same reason which induces some savages to swallow earth, lest they should be inconveniently hungry when there is nothing to eat. Having further disposed of a slice of bread and butter allotted to him in virtue of his office, he sat himself down to wait for school-time. He could not but observe how silent and sad the boys all seemed to be. There was none of the noise and clamour of a schoolroom, none of its boisterous play or hearty mirth. The children sat crouching and shivering together, and seemed to lack the spirit to move about. The only pupil who evinced the slightest tendency towards locomotion or playfulness was Master Squeers, and as his chief amusement was to tread upon the other boys' toes in his new boots, his flow of spirits was rather disagreeable than otherwise. After some half-hour's delay, Mr. Squeers reappeared, and the boys took their places and their books, of which latter commodity the average might be about 1 to 8 learners. A few minutes having elapsed, during which Mr. Squeers looked very profound, as if he had a perfect apprehension of what was inside all the books, and could say every word of them.